Welcome, everyone, to the Irish Breakdown Podcast. Appreciate you all for tuning in today. Ryan Roberts, of course, Director of Recruiting here at irishbreakdown.com. Make sure you go check out, if you haven't already, boards at irishbreakdown.com for the latest recruiting and team intel, as well as some great conversation in the Notre Dame community. Like, share, subscribe, all that great stuff. Getting us started here. Unfortunately, me and Brian Driscoll were not able to do a live show today, so I'm just going to give you guys a little bit of extra recruiting conversation that I was actually just finishing up a story at irishbreakdown.com, and I just kind of wanted to give you guys a little bit of update on a position that is very important for the 2024 class, and also just have the conversations. I know that this inspires a lot of great conversations, so make sure you comment, subscribe, all that great stuff as well. If you're on the boards at irishbreakdown.com, I would love to have a conversation with you about safety recruiting in the 2024 class. I would argue, this is an interesting topic, I would argue, though, that safety recruiting is the most, I don't want to say volatile, because I don't think that's the right word, but it is the one position in 2024 where I think you could have the most different combinations of what the class ends up being. The only absolute that we know in the 2024 class at safety is that Kennedy Urlacher, the safety out of Chandler, Arizona, is going to be in it. We know that because he committed the 1st of May to the University of Notre Dame, and that we expect him to be locked in for the long haul. That's the only absolute, though. After that, you can legitimately convince me in a class that you need at least 2 more safeties, potentially 3, that there could be a host of different combinations. Names from DeJuan Lane to Oliver Miles to Paul Menke to Davis Andrews. There is a lot of names and a lot of unique combinations that I feel like you can put into this class. So I wanted to kind of talk about what I think is a big pivotal month for Notre Dame, which is June, that is coming up here very shortly. June, of course, a lot of official visits have been set up for the University of Notre Dame, as well as to a lot of other schools. And I believe that we are going to get a lot of clarity in that month on safety recruiting, because let's be honest, it is a huge, huge year for safety recruiting for Notre Dame. Why? Because the last 2 cycles have not gone the way that Notre Dame staff, fans, Chris O'Leary would have liked it to go on. Flashing back to 2022, Notre Dame, unfortunately, was not able to sign a single safety in the 2022 class, so you pretty much struck out of that. Well, you didn't pretty much. You struck out in that class. 2023, the makings of something special. At one point in this class, you have Peyton Bowen, Adon Schuler, Ben Minnick, and Brandon Hillman all committed in the class. Of course, we know that about the hysteria that was around the Peyton Bowen decommitment. Well, not really decommitment. He just ends up tried to sign with Oregon, ends up signing with Oklahoma. And of course, the Brandon Hillman debacle after signing day, where basically he's not going to get admitted to school and he had to reopen his commitment. And now he is going to be playing for the Michigan Wolverines. So you still have a good 2-man class in 2023 that signed with Adon Schuler and Ben Minnick, but it could have been a whole lot better. There's no doubt it could have been a lot better. And now that you are looking at the safety roster for what it currently is, even after Antonio Carter, the grad transfer from Rhode Island, signed to Notre Dame, this safety position is still a little bit in dire straits. This is very important for 2024 to be able to not only sign at least a 3-man safety class, but to get some impact talent in this class. So let's work through a few of the important dates and a few of the important names to know that are on the board for Notre Dame. And names that we know that Notre Dame has been on for a little bit, and that going into the decision date for a lot of guys, because that's what June's going to be, is it's a final checkpoint, a final data point for Notre Dame. You need to be aware of just how some of these visits go. So I went in chronological order for when these visits happen, with Kennedy Urlacher obviously already committed to the class. So Paul Menke, who was a safety, Paul Menke Jr. out of Schertz Samuel Clemens in the state of Texas, originally visited Notre Dame for the first time April 14th to the 15th, so he had a 2-day unofficial visit. He will be visiting Notre Dame on the 2nd through the 4th officially of June. Now, this is a really intriguing football player, 6'2", 180 pounds, very long, athletic, not the most physically imposing hitter, but he is a true free safety type on the board with Notre Dame. High academic kid. I mean, he's looking at places like Stanford, Notre Dame, the great institutions, Duke. He's looking at these great academic institutions, and academics means a whole lot for a player like Paul Menke. And Paul is also a talented player. He is rated as the number 137 overall player, number 11 in the safety class in the 2024 class on 3. So he is a high 4-star by that publication, coming off of a 67 tackle, 3 interception season for Samuel Clemens, where he also was a really dynamic wide receiver for the team. So he has ball skills. He's been offered by teams such as Notre Dame, Washington, Stanford, Colorado, Minnesota, Missouri, Washington State, Iowa State, Arizona State, and Kansas, and Duke, amongst a few others. His dad, funny enough, actually played quarterback for Washington State as well as playing basketball for the school. He already has visits set up to Stanford, Duke, and Notre Dame. So if you want any proof that the kid is highly an academically oriented young man, you go to Notre Dame, Stanford, and Duke. So Paul Menke is a guy that's going to be on the board, that has been on the board, and will be on campus early on in June. The next official visitor of the safety group is Davis Andrews out of American Fork High School in the state of Utah, 6'2", 190 plus pounds, a young man that has been a player that Notre Dame has been incredibly high on for a long time now. He will be on campus from June 6th to the 8th. He's got offers from Tennessee, UCLA, Notre Dame, Utah, Stanford, Arizona, Colorado, Washington State, Northwestern, Cal, and BYU. I believe the Utah and BYUs of the world are an interesting player in this conversation. And I know that he has official visits that he is finalizing dates for Utah and UCLA in June on top of the Notre Dame visit. Davis is Mormon. He is a young man, though, that has not finalized if he's going to take a Mormon mission or not. So there's some things to figure out, obviously, if that is something he wants to do. Notre Dame has done it before with a guy like Keanu Kia in the 2021 class, but this is still a situation that is pretty foreign to Notre Dame, as it is to UCLA as well. They haven't done much of that in the past, but BYU and Utah are obviously very familiar with players taking these missions. So we will see what happens with all that information. But right now, Notre Dame is in a very good spot with a player like a Davis Andrews, and he is obviously going to be in for the official visit early on in June. So I think that he has a chance. Well, Notre Dame has a chance to potentially close as long as the fit makes sense. And I think it could. Really do think it could. Another player that's been on the board for over a year now is Marquise Gallegos, who is a safety out of West Hills, Chaminade in California. Listed at 6'1", 170 pounds. Young man that needs some physical development. He's not the biggest player of all time, but incredible ball skills and incredibly proactive football player. He has offers from Notre Dame, Michigan, USC, Oklahoma, Oregon, Texas A&M, Tennessee, UCLA, Washington, Nebraska, Michigan State, Colorado, Washington State, and Cal, among several others. So he is a player that is being pursued by a lot of heavy hitters in this class. He will be on campus June 9th through the 11th. That will be his, I believe, 3rd or 4th visit on campus in Notre Dame. So he's well aware of Notre Dame. I am still curious to see where he is on the hierarchy of the safety board and how well this future visit goes for Marquise Gallegos. But a player that's been on the board for a long time. He also, like Paul Menke, has some free safety qualities to him. He really excels working from depth, needs to obviously fill out his frame, but there are ball skills and there are proactiveness to really work with for a guy like Marquise Gallegos. I would argue the best football player of the safety group that will be on campus at Notre Dame in June is Jalen McLean, who is out of West Orange Seton Hall Prep in New Jersey, 6 foot, 185 pounds. This young man is a player that Notre Dame has been trying to get on campus for a long, long time. Rated as the number 105 overall player, number 8 safety in the country by On3. ESPN sees him very similarly as well. He's 157 and the number 14 overall safety in the 2024 class. He will be on campus June 16th through the 18th. Since being offered by Notre Dame back in the end of 2022, This will be Jalen McLean if he makes the trip, his first visit to the University of Notre Dame, which we know if when they finally get players on campus, it's usually very eye-opening. There are a lot of belief, and including by me, that Jalen McLean is a clear Notre Dame fit. It's just about convincing him on this trip. Fresh off of 83 tackles last season, had an interception, a sack, was also a player on offense for Seton Hall Prep. Dynamic football player who's being pursued by a lot of great programs. Notre Dame, Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, LSU, Miami, Oregon, Penn State, Texas A&M, Tennessee, Wisconsin, Nebraska, Michigan State, Ole Miss, South Carolina, Pittsburgh, Kentucky, Maryland, Syracuse, Minnesota, South Carolina, Louisville, Iowa State, Georgia Tech, Boston College, and Duke, among several others. So he has a long list. Oregon's a team that has been on him for a long time, a team that he also really likes. Penn State's one that's been incredibly notable. I think Ohio State can always be a player in these types of situations, as can Georgia. Talented free safety on the board, who I think Notre Dame would love to have a realistic shot with. The June visit will go to show if that fit makes sense, because we've obviously have heard a few things about maybe some things that he might want that Notre Dame would not be able to provide. So keep an eye on Jalen McLean, June 16th through the 18th, making his first trip to Notre Dame. There are also a couple players that have yet to set up official visits, but those are 4 so far that are names to note. A couple kids that Notre Dame I know is trying to get on campus. One's DeJuan Lane, who was just on campus last month, a player out of the state of Maryland that Notre Dame is incredibly high on. 6'3", 190 pounds, fast, explosive, physical, track kid. There's a lot of upside with a guy like DeJuan Lane. One of the higher upside of any safety in the 2024 class. Notre Dame was trying for a long time to get in with him. Didn't seem like they were making a huge impact, but recently that has changed over the last several weeks. Visited Notre Dame. Word is that visit went very well, and we expect them to be a player with DeJuan Lane, and it seems that he is being very reciprocating that interest a whole lot more now recently. So DeJuan Lane is a player that has not set up an official visit yet, but the expectation is that it could happen, and Notre Dame is working diligently to make that happen. A couple other kids that you should keep an eye on. Oliver Miles III, who is a talented defensive back out of the state of Texas, player that, similarly to Brandon Hillman last year, plays a lot of everything for his team. I mean, Isaiah Canyon, who's also committed to Notre Dame, Georgia wide receiver in the 2024 class. Similar backstory as far as Oliver plays quarterback, plays wide receiver, plays safety, plays corner. He also punts for his team. He's also one of the best punters in the state of Texas. Does a little bit of everything, which means he doesn't really focus on one thing. So it does mean that he's a little bit raw in his technique right now. But kid is explosive. He's over a 49-foot triple jumper and over a 22-foot long jumper in track and field. Very explosive. He's just a really good football player. Good ball skills. I question what the long speed is overall, but the short area and the ball skills are impressive. Oliver Miles is a really talented kid who I think football is definitely best in front of him. So keep an eye on him. A couple guys that are a little bit newer to the board, but I think we should just keep eyes on as far as potentially trying to get them to campus if you're Notre Dame. One of them, I believe, is the most recent offer, Malcolm Ziegler, who is out of North Carolina. Notre Dame had just offered him a couple days ago. He is a 6'2", 180 pounds. You will notice a trend in this class for Notre Dame as far as targets. They're looking for length and they're looking for athleticism. That's what Malcolm Ziegler has. He reports a 4.38 40-yard dash. He also ran a 10.7 600 meter. So seems like the speed checks out, especially when you pop on the film. Young man is a free safety type, incredible ball skills, really athletic, and he's the type of kid that once he gets the football in his hands, he has a chance to score every time. He also plays on the offensive side of the football, and there is some physicality to him playing over the middle. You don't see a ton of reps and him stopping the run traditionally, but you do see a lot of nice shots over the middle as a defensive back coming up with violence. So Malcolm Ziegler is a young man that I would keep a very strong eye on. Really talented player. Another free safety type, which Notre Dame did need more of those on the board. We'll see if Notre Dame is able to get Malcolm Ziegler to campus and able to have an impact, because we know, judging by the 2024 class so far, and flash forwarding to the 2025 class, Notre Dame is trying to have a bigger impact in the state of North Carolina. Jack Larson, Bryce Young, Micah Gilbert already in the 2024 class. Maybe Malcolm Ziegler becomes the fourth. And then the last guy, who is not 100% what Notre Dame is looking for, in my opinion, as far as guys that really impact the game from depth, guys that are true free safety types, but a young man that it seems like Notre Dame has a little bit of interest, or a high interest in, is Anthony Robinson Jr., who's out of the state of Louisiana, 6'1", 190 pounds. If you put on his film, he plays very much like a short zone strong safety, physical box player, also plays a little bit of an overhang position. So I do have some questions as far as how he fits into the game, but when you look at him, I say kid is super physical, downhill, and I just think he's a really good athlete. I think that he can do more from depth, but his high school in Louisiana just does not ask him to do that. Reminds me a little bit of Jamal Adams. And again, not saying he'll be the impactful player that Jamal Adams was, but stylistically, you see him physical, downhill, rover, strong safety, but maybe he can do a little bit more over top than what he's given credit for at the high school level. So keep an eye on Anthony Robinson, Malcolm Ziegler as a couple of guys that are newer to the safety board, but could end up being important for Notre Dame. Want to thank you all for tuning into this video. If you liked it, please hit that like button, subscribe to the podcast. 5-star reviews are very much appreciated. Be coming back with more recruiting topics over the next few weeks. Very important month of June coming for you all. So thank you all. Appreciate it. From Ryan Roberts, thank you all for joining the Irish Breakdown Podcast.